so much about how to grow and keep going. One day he told me that Apollo, no matter what problem you have, as long as the sun comes up, you really have not much to worry about. So I have dedicated my life. That's one of my it's one of my mantras that I carry with every day, regardless of what has happened. I'm very thankful for having him here today. Thank you, Daddy. We have Brenda. Uh, is it Brenda here today? We have Bree. Yeah, she goes by Bree. I'm sorry. I'll go by that. We have Bree with us here today, who was a niece of Raul Rivera, who was gunned down a couple of weeks ago, and I think we touched bases on that last week. And I thank you very much for being here, Bree. She's a very strong young lady and is ready to get into this fight. Thank you very much for being with us, Bree. And we have Uncle Cephas Johnson, aka Uncle Bobby, straight out of Oakland. And I got nothing but love for you guys out there, what you guys are doing. Thank you very much for spreading your perception all the way down here and just, becoming an ally of something that is growing on a larger spectrum, because the pain is true and the change will be true as well. It will be real. Thank you very much for being here, Uncle Bobby. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank
All
you
right.
for having me.
We have Beatrice, also known as Auntie B. I love these names from up north. Man. I bet you everybody on the block knows that. Let's go to Auntie B's house. Where you at? I'm at Auntie B's house. Auntie B, thank you so much for being with us here today. And I look forward to hearing about your experience and shining out your perspective through this platform that we've been blessed to have.
My
here
San
today.
Diego experience. I lived here for 17 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually part of the Justice for Sagan pen movement.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So definitely we'll keep it pushing with that network.
Yeah.
More than happy to have everyone here with us today. I'd like to go straight to our historical anchor today so that we can get a move on and continue with the actual discussion, what I like to call the meat and potatoes of the day.
All right.
Art?
So today's topic is police killings. I only have two major examples I wanted to point out today. The first one was Jason Russell. In March in 2012, a short documentary was released addressing an African war criminal named Joseph Kony. The documentary became popular, but its creator, Jason Russell, suffered a mental breakdown in public. He was unarmed, and mental illness is not a crime. So he was safely detained by police for psychiatric evaluation without incident. Coronado police. This was in Coronado, by the way, and was hospitalized for weeks. Because of the help authorities provided him, Jason Russell was able to recover from his breakdown. So that's one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the other aspect. This is Alfred's story. So this happened on September 27, 2016. And it started a little before 12:57 p.m. Alfred who's 38, had recently lost a close friend and arrived at his sister's apartment in El Cajon. Her sister's name was Lucy. And he looked sweaty and was scared, and he was claiming that he hadn't slept in 2 days. Lucy was worried, so she called 911, told him that her brother wasn't acting like himself and was hoping that they could send an ambulance to take him to a mental facility. She specifically told the dispatcher that he was unarmed. It would take over an hour for police to respond, and the fact that he was unarmed wouldn't reach the police who responded. And so, not wanting to deal with police, Alfred soon left her apartment, and Lucy left for work. And as she was driving, she noticed that Alfred was walking in and out of the streets. So she called 911 a second time. This was at 1:44 p.m. With Alfred walking in and out of traffic, others began to call 911. Normally, for someone who's having a mental breakdown or a mental episode, authorities usually send a psychiatric emergency response team instead of just police. A PERT team had become clear at around 1:52 p.m., but they sent the dispatcher sent them somewhere else instead. And so Lucy continued to wait for help. She called a third time at 2:01, and then that's when they dispatched Officer Gonzalez and Josh McDaniel. So in the video, as soon as you see Alfred, he starts backing away from the officer, and then as soon as you see the officer, he already has his gun out. It's hanging off of his left side, and it's pointing down. And so Alfred was he had already said that he was paranoid, so he was backing away from the officer. And so then a second unit came with Josh McDaniels. He immediately exited the vehicle and he decided to pull out a taser and not a gun, which put on display a clear alternative of what Gonzalez could have done differently to de-escalate the situation. So had Alfred been going through a mental breakdown while he was white, like Jason Russell had in Coronado, it would have probably sparked a debate about how law enforcement treats those suffering from breakdowns. But because he wasn't white, all that mattered was the second that Gonzalez started feeling afraid. So not feeling like himself, and then cornered, Alfred made some sort of gesture at the officer. And McDaniel fired his taser. Gonzalez fired 4 shots. So the shooting happened at 2:10 p.m. behind the Los Panchos on Broadway and Molson in El Cajon. And the aftermath was streamed, which is what brought the attention afterwards. That's the story. The thing I wanted to emphasize was the fact that there was a PERT team that was available at the time, and they could have sent them, and the outcome could have been different.
Yeah, for those who are unfamiliar with PERT, that's the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team. It's an organization here in San Diego that was set to be an exemplary program in the nation of how clinicians can work with law enforcement to be able to de-escalate situations involving mental health. And it seems like they're really, really struggling to get a grasp on how exactly they can go forth doing that. Here in San Diego, with a lot of the situations that have been turning out where situations could be de-escalated, but they turn out to be something as if it wasn't even there. You know,
Right.
It's a very difficult situation. You have any more to tag on to that?
Well, some of what I observed in the video,
Mhm.
the aftermath video, you know, the officers didn't. At first, they kept pushing her back further and further into
My
the
sister?
street. Yeah.
Okay.
And she was just bawling. She you know, didn't know what to do. You know. And the first time the officers finally come to her, it wasn't to comfort her. It was to ask, you know, what's his name, you know, information to fill out for the report rather than, you know,
Rather than
this
what
is the
just
status
happened.
on your brother.
Yeah, that's definitely, we're gonna get a lot more into that when me and my dad team up for this particular show on that topic. We have about 4 minutes, and I wanna reach out to Cephas Johnson, Uncle Bobby, so that he can talk briefly, maybe about just an introduction of Oscar Grant's situation and the story surrounding that, the narrative surrounding that.
Well, first, thank you for giving me the time to be able to share our story with your listeners. I am affectionately known to the community as Uncle Bobby. I'm the uncle of Oscar Grant. Many of you who may not have heard of Oscar Grant, if you've seen the movie Fruitvale Station, that is about our family. Oscar was murdered on January 1st at the Fruitvale BART station in Oakland, California, as a result of an alleged confrontation on the train. And as you know, you can actually go to YouTube and actually witness the murder yourself. So I won't get into the graphic details of what happened on the platform, but I will tell you about the resurrection. And when I speak about the resurrection, that is what happened after his murder. It was the community that embraced us as a family, stood with us, cried with us, went back and forth to court with us, prayed for us, but most importantly, utilized their First Amendment right to speak to the very injustice of what they witnessed on that platform when Oscar was murdered. It was because of that, and the IOW, the Longshoremen Union of San Francisco, Local 10, shutting down the ports in Northern California. Because of those incidents, you know, the combination of coalitions coming together, we were able for the first time in California state history to have an officer arrested, charged, convicted, and sent to jail. Now, we don't count that as a victory, but we do count it as historical, because we have to be clear. Had it been a victory, over 10,000 young men, females, and children would not have been murdered since Oscar's death.
My brother would still be alive.
Yeah, your brother would still be alive. So we don't count it as a victory, but if we do count it as historical. And what's important here is that we heard you speak earlier in the opening about the community embracement, the community coming together, but also having this type of venue to share these stories. Cornell said it like this: if you want to hear the truth, you must let the suffering speak.
Mhm.
And it's very impactful when you listen and hear these stories, because we're only telling you the truth of our experience
Yes.
and how important it is that the community embrace us. Not only embrace us, but stand with us and utilize their voice to bring about real systemic change. I mean, there's a lot that I can say, but I will not overrun my time. But I, again, want to say thank you to the listeners for allowing me to share these few words.
You have a lot more words to share today. We got a whole
Oh,
hour to
oh,
run.
oh,
We're not done yet. We're not done yet. That was just a sample. B, we have a minute 33 seconds of commercials. If you can introduce yourself and speak
Okay.
more on the subject, I truly appreciate that and what you guys are working on and the stuff that you did here in San Diego and where we're at now and where we're going.
Yes, my name is Beatrice, affectionately known as Aunt B, and I am the co-founder of Blood Not Blood campaign. I also lived in San Diego for 17 years. I know San Diego. I know the mentality here. And I know the mentality of the oppressor and those who are oppressed. It's a hard job here. I know this. I know, but I see that there's some improvement and we're coming up. We're gonna make some changes in San Diego. But the work that we do, I don't know, how many people saw the movie Fruitville Station?
I saw that in the theater.
Have you seen it?
Saw it.
That's a movie
Very
about
inspirational.
the life of, a day in the life of Oscar Grant. So you get a chance to see it, if you can take it. A lot of people can't take it, even though, you know,
It was
you
tough.
can't take it.
It was tough.
Yes, and so, Cephas' Uncle Bobby Johnson started the Oscar Grant Foundation in 2010. And together we ran it for four years, and then he gave it to his sister, Wanda Johnson, Oscar's mother, and then we started the Blood Not Blood campaign. So now we have been around the country and across the seas, gathering families to come together to unite, to fight.
You got my
For police
family.
accountability.
We're here to fight. We're here to
Yeah.
fight. We like to go to commercials now, and when we come back, we will continue this. Please be with us.
Gotta have police accountability.
Gotta have it.
Gotta have it.
Gotta have it.
But we can tell you about a bill we just had passed in the,
Let's
just
go
in the
ahead.
Senate.
Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the things we want to talk
You gotta
about.
talk about it. I'll take
What to
notes
do
on this so that we
legislatively.
can bring it up. I'll say.
Just I mean, it has never, no bill concerning police has ever gotten through appropriations.
Yeah, we tried.
It passed appropriations, it passed, and so now it gotta go to the Senate.
It's on the Senate floor.
It's on the Senate floor right now.
Alright,
That
let's-
just happened like 2 weeks ago.
What's
Bill
the-
11.
No, it's SB 1421.
14, that's what I mentioned last week.
1421.
Yeah.
That's the Nancy Skinner bill.
Because it,
I think it was on and they put his office back again.
Nancy Skinner?
Well, okay, yeah, so what happened, Mark Leno was the initiator of the bill, right, about 2 years ago,
We gotta
2016.
talk about this on air.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. I'm real
Checking was good.
knowledgeable.
I'm like, this is unrecorded. Hold on, wait. Let's get this on air. It's not break time conversation.
Yeah, we can-
That bill was on, it was put off last year.
No, 2 years ago.
2
2
years
years
ago.
ago?
It died in
Yeah, I think it was
appropriation.
2 years ago.
It died in appropriation.
Yes.
They did that by design. But since then, you know, murders have continued and the climate has changed.
Mhm.
And so we were able to get it passed just not even a month ago through appropriation. Now it's on the Senate floor. I'm sorry, not a month ago, 2 weeks ago.
Let me know when to go.
Yeah, but yeah, I can tell the story because we've been running back and forth.
You got 1 minute?
Yeah.
1 minute? That's up. Alright, I need you to tell your story,
30
Brenda.
seconds.
When we get back, we're gonna go straight to your story, and then, we're gonna definitely hit it hard with Alfred Bree. I'm sorry, we'll work our way back.
Okay.
Make sure that, SB 1421 is mentioned
Oh, yeah.
in depth.
Yes.
And the founders are not-
5 seconds.
5
5
seconds?
seconds.
5 seconds?
Inside voice.
Go.
Welcome back to the Mind Quorum. Today, we're here with 4 very special guests. Richard Olango Buka, my father, Bree, niece of Raul Rivera, Cephas Johnson, also known as Uncle Bobby from Oakland, and Beatrice Aunt B, also from Oaktown, representing San Diego here today. And I'd like to thank everybody for being here and joining us. I'd like to carry on for where we left before the break, after the introduction of the situation surrounding the shooting of the young man, Oscar Grant. Now we move on to Bree. Please let us once again, just basically reorient us on the situation that surrounded your uncle briefly and where you're at now and where we're going to be moving forward, what has motivated that, and what you're affiliated with and how you want to continue.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this opportunity again. Like we spoke last week, my uncle Raul Rivera was murdered 13 days ago here in San Diego, South Bay San Diego, off the intersection of Tacaylo and Hollister. He was experiencing severe emotional distress that day. Prior to him being killed by 3 police officers on May 27, shot over 20 times, he was attempting to commit suicide by jumping off an overpass off Saturn Boulevard when a concerned citizen called for help and called him in as a jumper. Police arrived on the scene, convinced my uncle to talk to them, but ultimately let my uncle walk away, even after that he was called in as a jumper, even though they saw him positioning himself over overpass, even though he expressed to them that he was depressed. They let him walk away. They did not take him in for psych evaluation. They did not notify the family. So then hours later, as my uncle continued to be in emotional distress and irritated and frustrated, angry, he was walking in and out of ongoing traffic within that intersection. He was first approached by Border Patrol, who then called SDPD. It took less than 15 minutes for SDPD to shoot and kill my uncle in that intersection. And they continued to shoot him after he had fallen to the ground. And after he was dead, they handcuffed him and they left him for 12 hours until the next morning. So it's been very difficult. There's been a lot going on these last 13 days. They still have not released my uncle to us. So, we're suffering. We showed up. We go to that memorial where he was killed every night to have presence there and show that he was loved and that the community is outraged. And we'll continue to be there every day after 6 p.m. at that site where he was killed. Until they release his body. So we definitely want to organize around this and to demonstrate this is a systematic act of violence. What happened to my uncle Raul Rivera is not an isolated act of violence, but a systemic act of violence, as you see with all these families and what continues to happen all over the nation with a historical context. So myself and 5 other families, including the family of Alfred Alongo, we did a press conference this past Monday, June 4th, in front of the Hall of Justice, bringing attention that this is systemic and we want change and we want accountability from the police department and the DA office. And so Raul's sister, Flora, said something very powerful in that press conference when she asked, have you started your implicit bias training? And out of all those stories that, of all of us that we're telling about our family members and what happened, that the only response from the DA's office was to respond to that question. And that their response was, quote, we've been doing training for years. Excuse me? What kind of trainings? What did that consist of? Was it mandatory? Who facilitated them? For how long was it? How do you gauge if someone met the goals of your training? You don't get to bank off your privilege of not giving any specifics without not holding your department accountable. This is wrong. This is an injustice. And if this is what you call training, so I have something to say to Summer Steffens and her office and the police department. If this is what you call trainings, then all you've done is train people how to kill Black and brown people, how to kill Black and brown people that have mental health issues, to kill Black and brown people that have mental health issues and that are low income. That's all your trainings have ever done.
People that cannot legally stand up for themselves, but they're starting to realize that when we band together, we can stand up for ourselves. And yes, those legislations that you stand behind at this particular time is a legislation that we understand that if we come together, we can amend them, we can change them. So with that, Bree, I still have chills, running down me from what you just delivered. It reminds me of what we went through. And I know it's still raw with you, and I can't even imagine what it's like that they're holding your uncle's body after they left that man to lie in the streets for 12 hours, handcuffed with 20 bullets in him. There's no humanity there. There's no humanity there. You know, people want to say, I don't want to eat chicken because how they treat chickens. But you see how people are treated worse than that.
The inhumanity of
And
humanity.
you still don't want to cast your vote to do something to change that. You know? I think we have a lot of growing to do. And I will have Tasha here introduce my father so we can engage in Alfred Olongo's discussion. And we'll work our way back in the table throughout the next 20 minutes.
I think also that we have to understand that what happens is when they come out with press conferences, they always or mostly come out and dehumanize the person that was killed by the police. And I think that needs to stop. I think that they were human beings. And no matter what their background is, you never see them come out and talk about the officer's background.
They don't. Not at all.
And we in some cases we've had an officer who's murdered two people months apart in the same manner, with multiple rounds, over 15 rounds, shot into these people's bodies, and it was justified. And I think that when Summer Steffens or any law enforcement upper brass chief or sheriff talks about the individuals that were killed and it's being justified or unjustified, that we make sure that we understand that these people are human beings. They are attached to people who love them. They are attached to people who are suffering because of their loss of them. And we need to stop trying to make it sound good for law enforcement and just make it be real and transparent. We still, and I'll talk about it later, we still, Earl McNeil, it was radio silence for this man's life. And again, it was another situation where he was mentally ill and needed help.
Excuse me.
And this man is in a canatotic state and has been moved from TCU to ICU. And the family is saying that he is not going to wake up. And so we still have these things happening, and I would still implore the law enforcement to do the same things that they do with SWAT, and that is pull back, wait, negotiate, and try their best to give it time to save lives from this point on. And let's push to get here in San Diego and California, the state of California, AB 931, the McCarthy and Weber bill that is being pushed for police accountability. Let's get that pushed up through the assembly and wherever else it needs to go so that police can be held accountable. Today I have Alfred Olongo's dad here, Mr. Olongo, who has been a champion for and since his son's killing in El Cajon, and we were actually there helping to make sure that the people who were voicing their concerns and disgrace at how he was gunned down were safe from being harmed from police. So we worked both sides, CAST and San Diego Compassion Project, Pillars of the Community, Justice for SD 33. We stood between many of the people that were out there in law enforcement because we knew that law enforcement had AR-15s and handguns, billy clubs and tear gas and dogs, and we wanted them to allow them to have the freedom of speech to speak and the freedom to assemble and not be crushed and devastated by the hundreds of officers from all over San Diego County that were asked to come out for this protest that happened in El Cajon. And it was really about the injustice of how he was just shot and killed, and how black and brown people are being shot and killed, or even tased to death or beaten to death in Earl McNeil's situation. So, Mr. Olongo, if you would like to go ahead and talk, and thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We know how difficult it has been. It's never an easy day that goes by.
Thank you very much to be given this opportunity at least to express myself and explain some issues as regards the killing of my son Alfred Olongo. There are issues in San Diego and other parts of California and United States. And there are problems which needs to be addressed. and we need to seek solutions. But before I go far, I would like to say that Martin Luther King died, but we still have a lot of work to do. He died for things like what we are talking about now, and the killing is still happening. Which means we have to work very hard to make sure what is happening as regards killing of black people, Latinos, by police needs to be properly addressed. And the police must be accountable if they kill anybody. In my opinion, if a police officer kills somebody and it is the killing is unlawful, that police officer should face law according to the required law for a county, a country. That means he should be charged. If for murder, he should be charged for murder. If for manslaughter, he should be charged for manslaughter. The problem I've seen, one of the major problems I've seen, which makes this system keep on going in circle. The killing is going in circle, and the authority is doing nothing. It is because the administrative culture that has been developed has never changed. Although Martin Luther King was killed for something similar to this, administrative culture has never changed. That means when a police officer kills somebody, the police chief will come in to defend that person. The district attorney will come in to defend that person. Police union will come in to defend that person. And the mayor will come in to defend that person. Now, here is a human being killed. And you find that these administrative authorities come and defend the killer. What puzzles me is that in America, if you kill a bird or a dog, you go to jail.
Yeah.
But here are police officers killing human beings and they're left free. What does this mean? This is a big problem. And that's why I think we need unity. We, the people who have lost our sons, daughters, brothers, or whatever we lost, have to unite as a body and focus and push a motion which will change this culture. Because if this culture is not changed, nothing is going to change on this. We are going to hear next week, or even today, somebody shot dead by a police officer, and nothing is going to be done about it. It is the cultural problem of administration. Look, I came to America looking for security, safety, and protection because there is problem in my country. Even right now, there is problem in my country. Yesterday, one of the members of parliament was shot dead. I was sent the information. And he was a very close person to the president of Uganda. I get this information because I'm the one running the revolution in Uganda now. I came to look for security, safety, and protection. Do you know what I got? I had to bury myself here in America. It's not what I got. Now, when my daughter saw our brother in the street, she called the police station that he was not normal, which means they needed to send parties. But the police department sent 911 squad. I call murder squad. I call them murder squad. This technically is negligence in the department of police department. Why did they send 991 people instead of party? That's why my son was killed. If they did not send 911, if they did not send 111, my son wouldn't have been killed. Now, when the police officer reached the site, there is one very important issue which an officer has to do, whether you are in the military or in the police. You have to do situational assessment. Dick Gonzalez and the other officer do situational assessment. That means you have to study what is happening here. Eh? Is this person harmed? Is he not harmed? If he's harmed, what is his intention? Or if I'm going to be attacked, what is my escape route? These people did not do this. If you watch at what happened, the other officer was teasing Alfred, and Gonzalez came, and if you watch carefully, he did not even assess the situation. He went straight, put his pistol on clock, on the what? The body of the pickup, to make sure that if he fired the shot, he was not going to meet. They put him of that pistol on the body of the truck is another problem there, because that is intentional murder to my son. He was ready. He put it there to make sure that he could not miss my son. That's when he put his hand on the pickup. Red flag number 1, they sent 911. Red flag number 2, there was no situational assessment. Red flag number 3, Gonzalez was determined to murder my son. And when he murdered my son, my daughter said, "Yulu, I did not call you to kill my brother. I called you to help him." Do you know what happened? Gonzalez instead insulted my daughter. Instead of giving reasonable answers. But he was already fired up because he has already killed a person. And I told him, when I got this message, I wish I was there. It would have been a very good fight. I would have seen my son going like that. Either Gonzalo would have killed me, or he would have gone. I don't fear saying this. I'm a soldier. I know how to shoot, and a marksman. I would have knocked him out. This is very serious. Because you cannot kill somebody's son, and the district police commander and the police chief would say the killing was justified. District attorney said the killing was justified. Police union said the killing was justified. And the mayor said the killing was justified. And I tell people, and I repeat it again, that it is the authority that is encouraging people to get annoyed, go and get their rifle, and go and defend their children, or their brothers, or their sisters, if somebody's brother is killed.
Wow.
Because if the authority cannot take the right channel, you have to do it. But that is not the right way we can do it. We need something better. That is justice.
I agree, Daddy. Thank you so very much for that perspective. And I think that is about as real as you can get.
Yes.
That is about as real as you can get. And I agree with you. If I was there, Alfred wouldn't have been laying down. It would have been one long fight. That's just how we were raised, and that's just what's in my blood. I would like to extend the next moments to Bree to continue about the recent passing of an uncle whose body hasn't even been returned back to the family. How do you confiscate someone's body after gunning him down 20 times for being mentally ill? What could you possibly be doing with a body for 3 weeks while the family waits?
It's been constant. There's been multiple holds on his body, and his sister calls every day to see when they're gonna release his body. What she told me today was they possibly might release him by Monday or Tuesday, but they can't give us an indefinite. So, you know, we're thankful to have met Tasha, and we continue to meet other people in the community, along with you, Apollo, and other families, because it's been very validating to meet other families and to hear what they've gone through. It's not like, you know, there's an instructional guide about how to go through this process, and when you're fighting too, your grieving is delayed, you know, because you wake up every day fighting. So that's at the moment. We definitely want to. There was quite a bit of witnesses. There was a lot of videos. The community is very traumatized for seeing my uncle being murdered in front of their eyes. And you know, a call to action too that we want is that to identify that this was, as I said earlier, is not an isolated act of violence, but also the secondary trauma of seeing someone being murdered in front of your eyes, or seeing that video. There's videos already been passed around of my uncle being murdered and stuff, and that type of trauma. who's going to go out there and give this community therapy or pay for their anxiety medicine or their medicine for insomnia or other possible health mental health issues that are going to come from this? There's so many people that are impacted by this. There's so many lives that are changed and that continue to be changed when this continues to happen. Those are ongoing wounds and trauma that we also have to talk to, and then we also, that the police department and the DA's office have to understand that this is going to be constant and ever going, and it impacts so many people.
Thank you so very much, Bray.
I think yes, thank you, Bree, and I think that we need to make sure that we understand that the families of the people who are killed by police are victims, but they're not treated in the manner that victims are treated, and then they're left kind of on their own to figure it out. And I think that that is a true disservice to humanity in any city or county or state that it's being done in. I think that we need to understand that until these things are stopped, until people really step back and negotiate and try to really save the life of the person that is in need of assistance of whatever kind that may be, we are going to still have these things happening. Again, I think that we also need to understand that all of these families that are here need to get some type of assistance and counseling, because what I have noticed in responding with my mobile response team to homicides and violent injuries with CAST and San Diego Compassion Project is that families are already traumatized before these events even happen. They've already had traumatic experiences. They've already had instances of abuse or problems that have gone without services and supports. And this kind of incident that happens all over the nation can make or break a family. It can bridge a family together, or it can break a family apart. And families are agitated and irritated, and those who are closest to them will be impacted by that. Even the generations, as we watched them take all life supporting measures away from Earl McNeil the other day. We had a press conference about it. There were 3 generations of families that stood around his bedside, from little babies to young kids to teenagers to 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds, friends, family members, women, children, men, all grieving, all having different emotions run through their bodies as they saw him go off of the life support and his body began to jerk and his eyes began to rapidly move. And then everybody began to scream and shout and break down. The nurses run in and begin to sedate him heavily, and then he just looks like he's sleeping. But he's still breathing. But he's not here. He's in a canatotic state. And he's not waking up. He's not having any movement. And so they took his life and his freedom and his liberty to be able to move and be who he is away from him, just as they took your loved ones. And what we're saying is we do want police accountability. We want officers to be accountable for shooting off 30 rounds and hitting someone 20 times. We want officers to be accountable for having someone in a BART station on the ground and taking out their gun and shooting them in the chest as they were not resisting, as Oscar Grant. We want help to come, as when your sister called for Alfred, and instead of he was met with 4 bullets that were shot at him and a taser. And so we want those things. We're saying that, treat, these are human beings. And then the reason why I speak out is because I realize that, they have to dehumanize the people that they kill in order to justify it. Right. They have to dehumanize them. And they can't dehumanize them. They're human beings. And they all have different backgrounds, but they are loved. They have family, they have children, they have nieces and nephews, uncles and aunts, mothers and fathers, grandparents. And to them, they were all they were. I want to say this, that we are going to start getting the information out about the officers.
Yes.
Cat does it best with Cop Watch, San Diego Cop Watch. We need to get the information out about the officers
And
what
more
they
at
do.
that, I think we have a quick cat fact.
Cat
before we
fact,
roll
quick
out.
cat fact. One thing that we do, because we want to prevent, because we track all of these killings and we have it since the 1950s, we're up to 800 and
Woo, I am so sorry. Okay, y'all, I just wanna make sure you hear me out, cause I'm gonna put up some numbers. Because of the fact that we do Cop Watch to prevent these, we track these killings, we're up to, I believe, 856, and this is from the 1950s. So even when all these families came together, we're only talking about maybe 1% that have actually spoken out. The rest of them need to, you know, have a life, they need, you know, they really need friends at this time. They need people, they need an extended family, and if people are considering them to be an extended family, you know, Laura McCaffrey, who actually is a writer for City Beat, she had no idea there was even a culture here to talk about families of people killed by police. So we have 856. We do have a cop list. We track many. We have all law enforcement officers on the beat. We make sure we have how much money they make, their badge numbers. List of officers who have brutalized or killed and are still on the beat. So in case we see killer cops, we let them know on the street and let them know that we're watching them. You know, I can't stress it enough. It's solidarity, protest, love, resistance. This is Cop Watch. We protect the living and one for the dead. So I just wanted to.
Thank you so much, Kat. Like I've always said, I appreciate the controversial, means that you have put together to counter what has been happening, and it's very unique indeed. And that's why I love having you around, because it's necessary, yin and yang. You know, you gotta have that.
and I am the
We are our
yang.
community press.
Right now, I gotta sign out this particular segment of the show, but we will continue for an extra Maya Quorum Blitz today, where we will sit at this table and continue on Facebook streaming live. We will not be streaming on KBOK radio anymore, but we will continue streaming live on all these media forms. I'm not sure they're all so different.
We have it on
Facebook
YouTube,
will
we
be
have it
there,
on
YouTube will be there,
Facebook, Cop
Facebook will be
Watchers
there,
are.
Cop Watchers will be there.
Tasha Williamson.
Tasha Williamson's Facebook will be there. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm signing out now, but we will continue going. Please believe that. We will start off with Uncle Bobby and Aunt B, and we'll kick it straight up in the air and keep it going. Yeah, that's it. Be luminous, be one. God bless the quorum.
Amen.
So
I got my music on that, right?
do we have to head out right away, or do we have to
No, we
speak?
we'll
don't.
stay here.
We keep
Oh,
going.
sweet.
There's nobody coming in.
We keep going. So,
We're not coming in, so we got the next. We got a little more time.
indeed.
Can I get a photo with Uncle Bobby?
We're still on.
We're gonna take a big photo when we get out.
Yeah, we're technically still. We're still
We're
streaming.
still
We're still
on.
streaming. We're still streaming. You want to take a break to take photos while streaming? Or it's all good.
King Richard, can I have your phone, please, sir?
Yeah?
Can I get your phone so I can take
My
some more
phone?
photos?
He got his pictures, he was like,
I've known this man since my tutoring with the
There you go.
IRC.
There you go.
Back in the day, right?
All right,
Yeah.
so we'll keep it going. We'll keep it going. We'll keep it going. We'll keep it going. Break is over. I like to pick back up right here, Maya Quorum, with our Quorum Blitz, which is the extra attached version to what you just heard. That has been documented. It's been set to the side, and now we're continuing here, firing forward. We need extra time. You know, we need all the time that we can get. And just to have a platform like this with 1 hour, I'm very grateful and thankful for it. Thank you, Mr. Tayari. I appreciate you very much. And now we will pick up with Cephas Johnson, a.k.a. Uncle Bobby.
Again, you know, to the listeners and those that are watching on Facebook, be it live, I am affectionately known again to the community as Uncle Bobby. I'm the uncle of Oscar Grant. As we know, Oscar was murdered on January 1st, 2009 at the Fruitvale Park Station. I've actually been out in this movement, as you can see, for almost a decade, 10 years. And we actually coming up on the 10-year anniversary of January 1st of this coming 2019. You know, I like to speak on 4 various areas. One would talk about the fact that how many people are being killed that are in crisis or have mental issues.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, and this is numbers that are given, some are by the Guardian report when it comes to police shootings. Over 52% of the police shootings around this country are mental health crisis issues. And that tells us that there is an alarming.
That's what percent? 52?
52 to 56.
52 to 56%. Wow.
So we're talking about over 50% of the shootings that we see of young people of color, specifically black and brown, are over 52%. And of course, PERC is important, as well as the crisis intervention training that they have in various agencies throughout the state of California and across this nation. But we also can say that they're not working. And part of the reason why they're not working is because police officers are not being held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be clear how accountability and transparency is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many pieces of legislation that has been brought forth with common sense that can help not only show transparency, but also bring about accountability.
Mm-hmm.
But before I touch on that, I wanted to talk about the unity aspect, as I heard my father talked about, Alfredo's father speak on.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, we have embraced families all across this country with this idea of building this unity. Because my voice alone could not be heard concerning Oscar. But all our voices together can be heard when we stand together. And if we think about what MAD did, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, it was a mother who had lost her son to a drunk driver. And she cried out. And she began to connect with other crying mothers. And MAD became one of the biggest nonprofit organizations with the power to change the legislation. And so we as a families that has been impacted by police violence must also duplicate that move, come together. And so last year in June, we created a Families United for Justice conference. We were able to bring 51 families together and have various workshops, presentations, and that fact that bonding, we call it bonded by blood, but united in love. And that is how we're beginning to build this unity. So this year in Oakland on June 28th through July 1st, we're having our second annual Families United for Justice conference.
When?
June 28th through July 1st in Oakland, California at the Airport Hilton, or Hilton Airport Hotel. And our workshops, presentations will be at Merritt College, which is the birthplace of the Black Panthers, where Huey Newton and Bobby Seale really met and coined the idea of creating the Black Panthers. So there's real historical activism that will be infused in us for those families that come, because our keynote speaker during the Merritt College workshop presentation will be, and we haven't confirmed it yet, but most likely will be, because she always speaks at our event, is Elaine Brown, who is the first female leader of the Black Panthers, the only female leader of the Black Panthers. And so there's going to be power in that. Some of the workshops center around media and documentation, organizing, how do we connect with the community to organize, to infuse a larger movement than just impacted families or your family alone. We have a legal workshop, a private investigation workshop, and a couple of other workshops that will be presented. And these are workshops that are very powerful in families building their strength up and healing through resistance and utilizing the tools that they get.
I have a question, Uncle Bobby.
Yes, sir.
This particular union here that's going, are there specific legislations that are brought up for these family members to understand, learn, be oriented on, and realize it as this is what the nucleus problem is that continues to perpetuate this particular issues, and then creating a widespread method of delivering it to the people so that they know what exactly to shoot at to be able to create that systematic change, or begin to create that systematic change, because it doesn't happen over 10 years. It happens over time by, planning accordingly and taking down one by one to rearrange it in a way that betters our lives and our communities. For example, one I would like to say, a legislation that is really bothering me is the law enforcement bill of rights, the way that it protects
Gotta go.
the law enforcement. My father says that the mayor, the captains, the chiefs, and everyone come up to protect them, but they come there to protect them because of the body of laws that are there to protect them. They don't do it because, I don't know if they want to, I don't know their personal situations, but I know that they do it because they're there to protect the law. And that is what the law says. We live in a land of laws, and every public servant must carry out those laws. And that is what is creating the situations that we have, and it perpetuates, and there's no answer to it because the law stays the same. And the law is a counter to the Civil Rights Act.
So if I can elaborate, the Peace Officers Bill of Rights is a major issue, but it's not a federal law. So every state has a Peace Officers Bill of Rights tweaked according to their state. And various Peace Officers Bill of Rights are more rigid than others.
Yeah.
We in here in the state of California have the most rigid Peace Officers Bill of Rights. But let's be clear that we can whittle away or begin to deteriorate this wall. And actually, it is our time for that, because just recently, Nancy Skinner introduced Bill SB 1421, which is the right to know. And all we're saying is that we need to know who is in our community, police in our neighborhoods. And not only that, if my loved one has been murdered and I have some questions, what information am I entitled to know concerning my loved one? Am I able to get his personal items back?
How about his body back?
His body back. What is the time limit? And so these issues are being addressed in this piece of legislation. So I don't want to do the legislation just hard by trying to verbalize it right at this moment in time. But I suggest the listeners and yourselves begin to take a look at the language in 1421.
That's what I always said. There's always languaging that can be changed. 2 words can change a community's entire way of experiencing life in America.
And I want to add to that, you know, if you're getting ready to have major surgery, your child, and you're not sure about this physician, this medical doctor, right? You can actually look up the information to see what kind of malpractice suits are against him. If you have a major case and you want this attorney to really represent you right, you have an opportunity to go to the California bar and look up this attorney's name to see what kind of issues that he might have been involved with to determine whether he's a legitimate person that you want to represent you. But our police officers, we are not entitled to know this information. And so what we have, and in Oakland, we have an officer that has shot 5 times. He's the most deadliest cop in the state of California. Lives in Oakland. I think his name is now, or his position now is Captain Kirsten Jordan, right? Well known in the city of Oakland for the incidents of shooting that has taken place throughout the city. And as you know, and as you mentioned earlier, like here in San Diego, you had an officer that shot somebody and 2 months later shoot somebody else. Okay. However, what happens is when there's a criminal trial, their past is not really revealed to the community.
That's 40 bullets, by the way, in human beings within a 3-month period, or within a year period.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to just add on there, but keep going, please.
Right. And so so we have to be clear that this is the reality that people of black and brown ethnicity face on a regular, consistent basis when dealing with the police. The criminalization, the dehumanization, and the demoralization of an individual after they have been murdered is not just traumatizing to the victim that has been murdered, but to the family of trying to uplift that person's name, their loved one. And so we have a right to express ourselves concerning these issues, but also to reveal to the world, to our community, those bad apples that exist. Now, we don't all in here agree that we don't say every police officer is bad, but if you don't root out the bad ones, then how can we look past not all officers are bad? Right. You see what I'm saying?
I think also, Uncle Bobby, is that we need to understand that good officers speak up. You know what I'm saying? Good officers arrest. Good officers, they talk, they tell, they arrest the officers that are doing wrong. They're not silent.
Exactly, but I want to raise this point because you asked, is there any legislation that will be talked about or is talked about that help bring up the understanding to impacting families and what we can do? And yes, one of the most critical pieces that we can talk about today is that we have an opportunity with families throughout the state of California, though families from all across the country and possibly over in London may be at the conference.
You definitely got our family, by the way.
great. We have an opportunity as families in the state of California to come under one umbrella and to speak volumes to SB 1421 as well as AB 931. 931 is going to be much more challenging because every police captain in the state of California will be at the state capitol for the actual basically introduction of the bill, right?
Well, we need to get
The
families
Public
there.
Safety Committee. The Public Safety Committee 931 goes up on June 19th. And so it would be our hope that the San Diego families can jump on the bus, as the families from Southern California have gotten buses to take them and meet us in Sacramento. We have to come in force. And we have to understand that when we show up in force, that power really helped move 1421 past Public Safety Committee through appropriations, now on the Senate floor, and we're tasked now to call the various senators to talk about how important that is. And so we're all doing that work, we're writing letters, and that's the only way we're gonna ever get legislation passed, is come up under one umbrella, understanding the criticalness of it, and then bring about a change. You know, I mean, I can remember when I was walking alone in 2010 for the, it was 1486 or 1286, which was a citizen review committee with an independent auditor. You know, and that's another story in itself, because when we try to do this stuff alone, we actually get whacked down really bad. The other part of I wanted to say too that gives us leverage is the fact that the Department of Justice in 2016, Kamala Harris, really under the table, helped initiate a piece of legislation called AB 71. And AB 71 is the data collection that had taken place of use of force by police. And they analyzed every aspect of use of force, whether it's baton or a firearm. And so just as an example, and these are real data numbers that I'm getting ready to give, and you can go view these yourselves. My numbers may be skewed because I don't have them just accurately pinpointed in my brains, but I'm going to give you an approximate. So just last year, between 2016 and 17, it was 782 incidents of use of force. Out of that 782, 300 and about 85 or 65 were use of force with the firearm. And out of that 365 or 85, 167 young men were killed with use of firearm. But these are the numbers that we need to know about. How many of those men were shot? And it was based on the officer's perception.
Exactly. That brings us back to
Graham versus Connor.
Graham versus Connor of 89, which is also a legislation which can be amended if people are aware
Just
of it.
because of perception, I got my cell phone in my hand and I'm shot dead, and then the officer justified on that perception.
On that law that protects him says that I thought it was a gun.
So these are the issues that we have to address as a body, as a unit going forward. The various legislation that we know that can unravel this perception. And you know, and there's of course law that has been in place that protects them with this perception. You know, Graham versus Connor we can talk about.
Connor is one that.
But I'll say this, and then I kind of let it go.
It's basically the officer's hindsight. Hindsight doesn't matter. What matters is what the officer perceived at that moment, that he was scared. And as long as you're scared, that's the thing. As long as they can say you're scared, you can't get into their head and prove that they weren't scared. So that's what the Supreme Court
knows that fear is
and
fear is the way out.
I always feel like if you're that afraid of your own community members, you should not be a police officer.
But let me cite a great example for you. So Johannes Mesley murdered Oscar Grant. And of course they criminalized Oscar, dehumanized and demoralized. But Johannes Mesley had a history. And so this is what I want to point to. So when he got on the police force about a year, not even a year and a half later, he was accosted a young black man, beat him up. Then he had another incident, he beat up another young black man. Eventually, he beat up a third black man, and they talked to him about it because the young man flicked a cigarette and he jumped on him. But the fourth black man, he shot 45 days before Oscar. I'm sorry, he beat up really bad. And then, of course, Oscar was murdered, right? And then he said when he shot Oscar, he thought Oscar had a gun. Okay, I don't know if you all know this, but that was the initial statement. He thought Oscar had a gun. Now, had we been able to reveal to the jury his propensity of his issues dealing with young black men, we could have told in what his state of mind might have been when he pulled that gun out and shot Oscar, and then alleged that later, when he got a better attorney, that he mistaked his gun for a taser.
Yeah.
That's what they emphasized for us to believe. But he thought Oscar had a gun. So my point is that perception can be easily addressed when we hold officers accountable for their acts. And if we don't hold those officers accountable that has been on the force, that have had these 15 to 20 police complaints filed against them, they will kill. And once they kill the second
They'll
time.
kill
the
again.
third time.
They kill again. It's like stealing. You know, when you go and you steal something, you know no one's watching, you go back there. Not saying that I'm a thief or anything, but that's the the theory of it. If you get away with something and there's no one watching, you go and you redo it again. And like you said, this particular officer slowly built up to the point where he became a killer because he realized that there's nothing stopping him from going to the extreme.
Right.
And he slowly worked his way there.
And the perception that he was even justified to use a taser when Oscar was already restrained. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have but make a long story short, and I don't want to overtalk this, that the conference is about building unity. So if we begin to really bring all the families in the state of California together and begin to help teach us all about these issues that are really plaguing our system when it comes to getting some accountability, getting loved ones' autopsy back, or their personal belongings back, we miss the mark. Because what happens is we have a family that don't know this body of knowledge exists, and they're in that battle by themselves.
Yeah.
And they're struggling by themselves.
And that's one thing, Uncle Bobby, that I would like to address. She just had a loved one, taken down 3 weeks ago.
Right.
You're someone that's
13
been in,
days
sorry, 13 days ago. You've been in this for a decade. And just the information that she can get and the comfort that she can get you're all the way up looking at bills. She's still trying to get a body back.
Exactly.
Exactly. So there's a spectrum to this of understanding as you go, and when you come together, sharing of that information, it brews a more powerful storm. And not a storm of destruction, storm of rearrangement, storm of community, storm of understanding, storm of knowledge, developing morality, uplifting a community, so that we don't have to constantly sit down and talk about, oh my God, someone killed someone. They killed us again. You have to walk a certain way on this street. You can't do a certain thing. Don't even.
We talk about the retaliation that happens, the intimidation that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Jonathan Cornell's family is not here, but his mother had been deported. His uncle had been is in a deport detention facility right now. They're fighting to try and get him out. And these are people who organized and met with law enforcement. They met with the captain of the Vista Sheriffs, and then he was detained and for deportation. So the things that they do and the way in which they speak to people who have lost their loved ones at the hands of their officers has got to change as well, because they talk to you all as if you are not human beings. They treat you all as if this was not your loved one that you cared for and watched grow up and raised and loved and supported, and had over to family outings and came over to eat dinner. So in the way that they treat you all after, there's never, we talked about this the other day, where Chief Nizlight here at SDPD apologized to you 2 years later, but yet Bree has not heard from him 13 days later. His officers killed her uncle. His officers did not kill his brother. So it was easy to apologize because we had no part in this. But now you have a part in it. Where is the apology? You had an opportunity to save his life with a 5150 hold, and you did it. And then you killed him.
And this comes from a chief that has requested a double of PERT clinicians. So he understands the environment of mental difficulties that people in his community are going through that he must watch. So he's ordered double clinicians. He hasn't gotten a response back yet.
Can I just share this one piece? And that type of trauma is really critical to deal with because the families are affected. Now, I just want to say this: the Association of Black Psychologists in the United States is having their 50th convention the same weekend, and so we have collaborated where we have clinical psychologists that is a part of this conference that can provide the mental aspect of what we need in order for you to move forward. Because here's the example: we're not a piece of the crime victims bill when it comes to us being murdered. And so when they do call themselves want to offer us a police officer or psychologist from the policing agency that killed our loved one, there's no way in the world we can comprehend getting healed with that thought that you from the same agency that just killed my loved one. And so we have to develop our own mechanism through our own style of treatment to bring about that sanity so that you can continue to go forward, because it's really healing through resistance. You know, there's many roles and challenges. And, you know, I don't want to talk about what I can give you for this journey, but we definitely want to personally invite you to the conference and make sure that you get there. We do what we can, you know, because you're just so new. And be surrounded by families that's been impacted, like my brother here, right? It actually can help lift you up and give you some form of stamina or strength to move forward. Because it takes that, because we met many of families that lay down and curl up and just can't do anything.
Exactly. And that's what happens, those stages of grief.
Right.
And in those stages of grief, people deal with it very differently.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes, I wanted to finish with you though. I
Oh,
was gonna
okay.
go to because I know it's gonna go down.
I wanted to add something too. They actually tried to whitewash Alfred shooting by putting out that single frame rather than the video.
Right.
And then they also went back into his past and talked about his police history and everything. Richard Gonzalez, the guy who killed him, has his own past. He had a sexual harassment lawsuit about a year before the shooting. He was sexting pictures of himself to a coworker. He was a sergeant at the time, and this was an underling. And who
She was lesbian, by the way.
she was a lesbian, had a wife, and kept sending her texts saying he wanted threesomes with all of them. And so she sued, and then after that there was some retaliation. So she sued the department again. But in between that, he shot Alfred. And of course, we all know that El Cajon PD has its own problems when it comes to like having a certain amount of tickets and stuff like that, a certain amount of stops that they're supposed to do. So they're just looking for, a lot of times.
They have a quota.
Yeah,
Well,
they have a
they
quota.
didn't have a good relationship with the African American or African community
Not at
as
all,
well.
not at all.
So I would like to, with this, I would like to go to Aunt Beef. So please drop it on us. Let us know what's going on in this vicinity, and then we will go to my father, and we will wrap up this particular get down.
Yes, first I want to say again to you and your family condolences, and we really would love for you to come and be in this space. And Uncle Bobby mentioned we work with families in the United States, but we have also been in the UK. We have been invited to the UK to work with those families there. We actually went behind the Iron Gate and gave the Prime Minister the demands of the families in the UK. So this, and I'm going to tell you the power and families uniting together. We're going to have the family of Ayanna Jones, 7-year, can you imagine that? The grandmother, the 7-year-old who was murdered in Detroit. Her grandmother's dead. She's still fighting. She's still here. It takes a lot to still be here. We're going to have Shalene Tyndall, he was murdered. 3 days after Oscar's 9th anniversary, BART police killed Shalene Tyndall, shot her 3 times in the back. Just imagine that. Was one, now they gonna shoot 3 times the next time. But they was real slick, like what he was talking about. They held the video back and they put this lie out that he had a gun and he pointed at the officer. And so the family demanded to see the video. So we're 2.5 months in and the video comes out. But the police and the BART has already did what they do because they didn't want another Oscar Grant. So the police are, they're some gangsters.
They cover
Okay,
the
and they were
tracks.
covered, and you have to understand that. And so that's why we have to come together and unite as family, and we have power. You're gonna see, you're gonna get strength. We have the family of Marlon Brown. I don't know if anyone's seen the vegetable garden murder. They ran over him and killed him. Andrew Joseph, 14 years old, the police took him out the fairground and let him put him on a highway. They didn't call his mama, they didn't call him, he was murdered. 14 years old, killed. These are the families and the stories that you will come and you will draw for them. Now, they might have a smile on their face, but it's only they're trying to fool the public. But that strength that they have, they will transfer it to you. When you hear their stories and that they're still in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's a struggle. Now, me, I haven't had my son murdered, but I have Oscar Grant. You know, I was part of the Oscar Grant movement. My friend Sagan Penn, we helped get that made that happen 30-something years ago because it was wrong. And the people don't like to talk about that. You guys should bring that up on every turn.
Well, you know, his family didn't do well after that.
Right.
You know, people don't talk about the aftermath.
Right.
Not only did in some of that he was saying I was defending myself, right? But also, you know, his family, his son is suffering right now.
I understand.
You know,
that.
Sagan killed himself. He
Right.
committed suicide, and so
they
I
say.
think that so they say.
So,
Yeah.
right.
So I mean, I think that, you know, and on both sides they're not doing well. You got
Right.
officers. These officers are now on administrative leave that have done the things, but are they getting the services and supports that they need? We justifying it in the DA's office and the U.S. Attorney's office, the Attorney General's office. We're justifying these acts. But then are we providing them the level of care that they need, ensuring that they get the care so that they won't do it again and again and again? And I don't think those things are happening. I know here in San Diego, there are over 200 services to law enforcement officers, and they go unused.
Well, let me just say this. For me, my concern is not the police right now. I'm just being honest.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is for the family. I don't care because they don't care about us. And so, good, don't do what you do. But right now, my concern is the families. I don't care. I'm like NWA. You know what I'm saying? And I swear because it's really.
We love you, B.
I'm telling you because it's so, this pain, it makes me, it's so, all these calls I get from these mothers, these families, and I'm talking about their children been killed 6 years ago, and it's this continued trauma and terrorize, that the police terrorize our community. I don't give a damn about them.
Wow.
I give a damn about our black and brown and even poor white being able to walk down the street without being traumatized on a consistent basis every day. Not, okay, they kill you, but before, just like she said, before our loved ones are killed, they are traumatizing us. It is not fair, it is not right, and it has to stop, and we have to stop it.
I agree. I definitely do.
And so please, Families United, come, because
We'll
you're
be
gonna
there.
bring, even though I'm telling you that you're gonna get something out of it, I promise you, the way you open your mouth and speak, oh, they're gonna get something out of it. So we're gonna get something from you as well. You know, you're going to give as well, okay? And so, I mean, this is all the power gonna be in Oakland.
Much love to
You know what I'm saying? This year. Well, last year was in Detroit. You know, that was the first time we had 50 families, 51 or so. And it was the first time, and it was talking, we did put a booklet together. It's not complete. We want the families to complete it this year. We'll have a session where it talks about this stuff. It's a workbook. So that you can help another family. When they come, we're going to complete this workbook. But it's views and questions answered by family members. What happened here? What would they like to see? It's a booklet that we have put together. And so
legislations that need to be changed and make
Right.
sure people understand it. It's a big circle every